Well, hello there, my fellow Wedding Florist friends, and welcome to the Wedding Florist Social Podcast. This is the podcast for wedding florists to learn all about acing their online presence. I'm your host, Vicky Laffey, and as a wedding florist of over 10 years now and a certified digital marketer, I want to help you get the right clients, get more followers, and never be stuck for content ideas again. Click the link in my description to get your free Wedding Florist Guide to Social Media Content Creation today. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Wedding Florist Social. We're talking today about a very, very important topic, something that should be talked about more and practiced, put into practice more as well. We are talking about inclusivity in the wedding industry. And I am honoured to have Michelle Taylor from the savvycelebrant.co.uk on to chat to us about this. Michelle runs a course on helping wedding businesses be inclusive. So I am absolutely honoured that she's put the time aside to come and talk to us today. So Michelle, anyway, enough of me rabbiting on. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Vicky. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, no, I'm so glad we're connected online, of course. This is the beauty of modern technology. So Michelle, I mean, we're probably going to talk about loads today because this is a huge and emotive topic as well. So let's get cracking. So first of all, I think it would probably be a good place to start to just sort of run people through, what does inclusivity mean? And for anyone who's sitting there listening to this thinking, they're not quite sure about, what it means or why it's important or anything like that. So could you just run through that for the listeners?
That's impossible. Inclusivity for me means that I respect everybody, regardless of race, gender, or any kind of identification. And it means that I will tailor my services to meet their requirements to make it as inclusive as possible. I can't cater for absolutely everybody. It's impossible to cater for absolutely everybody, but it's knowing what your limitations are. And when you think something I can't do, pass it on to somebody that can. For instance, I know I've got a colleague, a celebrant colleague, who specialises in Viking weddings. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would love to do a Viking wedding, but I wouldn't have a clue where to start. So if anybody did ever approach me for that, I know my limits and I would pass them to her. So that's what I meant about inclusivity. It's not trying to be all things to all people. Mm-hmm. It's knowing your limits and passing it to the person that best fits what the people need.
Yeah, because I guess you have to have your own niche and know your limits and stuff as well. So inclusivity isn't being all things to all people, because that wouldn't work in terms of business either. Yeah. So, and I'm so pleased you sort of mentioned other things that aren't just race, because I think to some people inclusivity just means, like it's a racial issue for them, but it's all things, religion, gender, etc. Yeah. So for those listening who might be thinking, well, of course I'm inclusive. I wouldn't dream of excluding anyone. I don't care what colour someone's skin is or what their sexual orientation is, or, what would you say to them?
Look at your paperwork, look at your websites, look at your social media. Are you saying I do same-sex weddings? Mm-hmm. That isn't inclusive. I do weddings. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But what my social media, my website, and everything that I post, I've got an inclusivity statement on my website. You don't have to have one, but I thought it was useful to have one. But I don't have to put all over my website, for instance, I do same-sex weddings. I just do weddings. But what shows I'm inclusive is the fact that I've got this statement on there, my pictures, the words that I use are non-gender specific, and people can see from the way I write, the way I speak, that I am more inclusive than I do same-sex weddings, because that means nothing. That's lazy as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. So, I mean, one of the things that sort of made me really want to cover this more is, I created, and a lot of the listeners will have been a member of this. I created an online summit last November for wedding florists and to teach them all about their social media. And it was really well received. One very kind lady did email me, and she said, do you plan to have any Black florists on the summit? Are you planning to interview any? She says, this isn't an attack. This is just me, asking you, do you plan to have any, as a young aspiring florist, as a young girl, I looked around and I couldn't see anyone like me. And so she says, if you're planning to interview anyone, great, or maybe you could have people on your podcast, or, things like this. And it really sort of, at the time, it was too late to kind of change there's so many moving parts. We were involved in organising a summit, and it was too late to get anyone new on then. But it's made me stop and think. Naturally, I didn't purposely go and find just white florists. I looked at people who were florists, who were really good at what they do, who could spread the word about the summit with their audiences and things like this. That's what I was thinking about. But it did make me think, that, well, yeah, I should have spent more time making sure that all, everybody was represented, basically. So this really made me think. It really did, and for those who don't know me, I'm the nicest person in the world who would never, exclude anyone. But it's about showing outwardly that, you're inclusive. And, as a white woman, I know this is audio, so people listening can't see, but as a white woman, I've lived a life of relative privilege, and I haven't had to sort of have that experience of looking around and not seeing people who look like me, and not thinking like, oh, well, people like me don't do things like that. Look, there's no one that looks like me out there. So it's, it really, really, it made me think like, come on, up your game here, Vicky. And I'm a nice person, but I can do better.
Yeah. And I think we can all do better. I think the issue, I know we were speaking off air, and for me, as it was for you, this all started with George Floyd's murder.
Yeah.
In 2020, May 2020, and those 8 minutes that rang around the world, it's like the shot that killed Martin Luther King and JFK. They rang around the world, those events. And it got me thinking, again, audio, people can't see me. I'm Black. I'm a mixed race woman of allegedly Black American heritage. We won't go there. I'll say allegedly, a Black American heritage, allegedly, and a white British mother. And it made me think and stop and look at the industry, which I love. Mm-hmm. And everything on Instagram, on Facebook, on the TV, it was white. It was very much cisgendered and very heterosexual. And things were starting to improve, and you were starting to see a lot more same-sex couples on TV and things, that was being more normalised. But there was very, very few Black and brown faces on TV. I wasn't represented on TV, and I hadn't really noticed because I live in a white world. And then as soon as George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, I was bombarded with images of Black and brown faces everywhere. And then it made me realise, whoa, why does this look weird? It's because I haven't seen it before, because I've just got so used to seeing blinkered. And there is people of all skill sets across the wedding industry and beyond, of all different colours, of all different genders, and of all different abilities. It's just because they're not at the forefront. They're quietly beavering away in the background, and they've got their niche, they've got their local market and things like that. But because they're never pushed either out of their comfort zone or pushed, because what's the point, because nobody's going to book me because they all want the top flight people, or whatever the reason is. And it's like, it takes time to find other people who might fit the criteria. They'll work within their communities, but they're not necessarily going to be working outside of the communities because it's not necessarily safe, or hasn't been safe in the past. I'm one of the ones that sticks my head above the parapet. I've always done that. But there's very, very few Black and Asian celebrants. There's a few of us, but not many. So it's wherever you go, it's going to be reflected, whatever industry. And I think we all had a wake-up call, and some of us buried their head back in the sand because it was too difficult to deal with. But a lot of us have thought, well, how can I do better? How can I show I'm inclusive without shouting from the rooftops, I cater for Black people, I cater for brown people? It's your imagery and it's your other language that you're using and saying that shows how inclusive you are. And like you say, going that extra mile and doing the research to find that Black or that Asian florist to bring into the podcast.
Absolutely. It's I couldn't agree more about the wedding industry, sort of what you were just saying there. It's when the Black Lives movement came about and George Floyd's murder, let's call it what it is, a murder, it did make me think, and it made me look around, and it made me think, like, look at my fellow wedding suppliers. It made me look at wedding magazines. And like, it is all like white, cisgender, heterosexual. Oh, bless you. No, you cough away. No problem.
Cut it out. Oh, God.
Don't you worry. You take.
Yeah, you just cut that bit out. Yeah, because it's been brewing. I think, yeah.
That's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Go on.
It did make me look around, and it kind of saddened me in a way, actually. It made me look around, and I thought, I know one Black wedding supplier in my circles. I know one Asian wedding company. I know one Chinese wedding supplier, and it shouldn't be like that. And that saddened me, first of all. I did reach out to one or two of those people and sort of say, like, hands up, white woman needs educating here, what's the best way to do this? And I tried to support them when they were sort of posting about the Black Lives Matter, etc. But it is sad that it's like that. And I think, I suppose a silver lining, if you want to call it, of that is that it has, like you say, pushed this sort of movement into the forefront and made people think. And you're starting to see more in magazines. So, like, if there's a photo shoot, for example, they'll make sure they employ a Black model, or make sure everybody's represented there. Like Offbeat Bride, for example, which is, I've just remembered, is where we met. We met on their Facebook page, and they're fantastic at being inclusive, posting about people of different genders or races or sexualities or things like, and they're learning too, even though they're at the forefront of this. This is kind of their niche, as it were. But we're starting to see that in other areas too, in other magazines where that isn't their speciality. They're just wedding magazines, or they're wedding blogs. And, you're starting to see all of this kind of inclusivity come about. And I think it's so important.
It's nice to see sustained, because obviously a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. A lot of people fell off the bandwagon. There are companies that are realising where they fell, and have got back up and onto they've got back up and they've sustained the input, which is good.
Absolutely, yeah, because there is, in terms of social media, there is this bandwagon thing that often happens, isn't there? And like we started to see a lot of Black squares on Instagram, for example, at that time, and and which is great to show the support at the time, but it's like, come on, put this into practice.
Do next,
sustain it, yeah. So, I'm always, my business is, teaching people how to kind of get their businesses out there online and attract their ideal clients with their online presence and things like that. So I'm often, I'm always talking about social media and websites and things. Can you give the audience a few tips on how they can do that in an inclusive way? I know you've mentioned about imagery and things like that, but what tips can you give to the florists? I
think a big tip is, especially if you're doing things online with websites and even just on social media, if you look at anything that I'm on social media and on my websites, I've got an inclusivity statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes a long way to show how you work with people, that you won't put up with any abuse or violence or racism from them towards you, and obviously you're going to treat them with respect as well, regardless of anything. And I think something like that goes a long way to show inclusivity. Using gender neutral language on websites is a massive thing. A lot of people even now say, the bride.
Yeah, bride and groom.
Yeah. But it's not just bride and groom.
Yeah.
There's a whole rainbow of genders. So I think just thinking like making your language gender neutral, you can get hold of a wedding, a diversity guide from the Career Queer.
Okay.
They used to
give me the link for that. We'll put that in the description as well.
Yeah. They used to, it's the LGBTQ EQUALITY WEDDINGs. That's now folded, but they've continued to offer for free the inclusivity guide under the Career Queer, and it's just brilliant because it really gets you. And it's not just about LGBTQ; it's about cultural disability and all sorts of equality. And it's really good to go through your language on your Instagram, on your Facebook, especially on your website, and just change things.
Yeah, give it a bit of a review, an overhaul, I suppose. Yeah. It even happens within the industry as well. Florists are, I don't know the statistics on this specifically, but it's predominantly female. But there are so many talented male florists as well, and also, people who don't identify as either. So, you see this, sort of florist posts on a Facebook group, for example, and they'll say, "Hi, ladies, can I just get some advice on the?" And you get a guy going, "Just ladies," or what about me too? Do you want my advice too? Yeah. So I think that doesn't mean someone's a bad person, right? It just means
the language.
Yeah, just realizing it, come into that realization and thinking, okay, what effect does that have on people?
One of my massive bugbears, and it probably doesn't bug anybody else, but it really bugs me, is people going, "Hi guys."
You see, yeah,
everybody does it without thinking. It's very American, but it's on TV, it's on the radio, it's everywhere you look, and it really, really annoys me because I'm not a guy.
This is interesting. I think that's a cultural thing as well. Is it because I think when people use it, and I'll hold my hand up, I use it sometimes as well. That's not, for me, I'm not using it as a sort of a gender term. It's just a general term for hello people,
So I say hello everyone.
Yeah, well that's exactly, yeah. So see, now you've mentioned that, I had no idea that would be we're all learning all the time.
It probably doesn't bug most people. 95% of people thinking, hadn't even noticed. I've taken it for what it was intended as, which was a term of saying hello. But for 5% of people, it could be a really derogative term. And for me, it just bugs me because I think it's like, it's American, stop doing it. Say hello, everyone.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a very small change, but it has exactly the same impact. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
That probably segues nicely into the next question that I was going to ask you. How do we know what the correct terms are to use? This is constantly changing. People are constantly learning, and yes, okay, we can't please every person 100% of the time, whether we're talking about inclusivity or not. You're never going to please 100% of people on the internet. The internet is a weird and wonderful thing, really, and there's often arguments and things like that. Everybody with different opinions, but I think it's about intention, I suppose. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about intention. If there's an issue and you're thinking, well, could that language possibly offend someone that you don't want to offend, or how do we know what the correct terms are to use? For different sexualities, different races, things like that.
When you talk about, you have to remember that sexuality and gender identification are two different things. People do get confused with sex and gender. You'll see, obviously the listeners can't see this, but on our Zoom thing, you can see that I put my gender identification on there, she, her.
Yeah, okay.
That's a way of starting the conversation. All over my social media, again, all over my website. And say Zoom and things like that, you'll see that I put my my gender pronouns. You ask people directly in you know, how they wish to be identified. You don't just say, "Oh, and what gender are you?" But it's part of the conversation. And if you've done it yourself, it makes that conversation so much easier to be had, because they're thinking, hopefully, oh, this is a person that might not understand everything that's going on, but this is a person that's taken some time out to, you know, to put this there. I will feel comfortable in putting my gender pronouns out there as well. When I talk to the families and the couples that I work with, obviously within my part of the wedding industry, I have a whole, I think it's about 5 pages now. I've got a whole section on diversity. And I say, how do you want to be introduced at the end of the ceremony? What pronouns do you want me to use? Is anybody within the wedding party identify in any way other than she and her that you know about? And are they going to be a part of the ceremony? Do I need to call them up to make a reading or anything like that? So it's always an ongoing conversation. I had a conversation with a couple who booked me, obviously, pre-pandemic. And since, and obviously the ceremony's coming up in May now, finally, but one of them has changed their gender identification in that time. So it was good to have that conversation anyway. And, you know, I know now, I know I need to address them differently during the ceremony. You know, and it's just a constant evolving conversation, but it's a conversation that people are 99% of the time happy to have, especially if they're employing you. You can't just walk up to a stranger in the street and say it, but, you know, they're employing you, so they expect you to be working with them in the right way and respecting however they wish to identify. And it's not just gender identity, it could be disability identity, you know, and cultural identity. So there's, you know, there's lots of things that you have to take into account, but don't be scared to ask the question, especially if you're leading with "I am." How do I address you, kind of thing, rather than just launch into it.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, what you mentioned there about people being scared, I think people are scared. Yeah. Let's face it, you know, with all the best of intentions, you know, they want to show that they are inclusive, that's, you know, they do weddings for everyone, and but they're scared to have a conversation, and they're scared to sort of even say the words like black or gay or whatever it might be in that situation. You know, they're scared to sort of say anything like that for fear of perhaps using the wrong term or you know, offending someone with their well-intended message. So how do we get around that?
If it's relevant, ask them. I mean, if you're dealing with a black couple, is it going to be relevant to what you're doing that you know they're black? Well, you can obviously see they're black, you know, but they might identify as something else within, you know, within the colour spectrum kind of thing. But, you know, is it relevant to what you are going to supply them with that they're black or they're Asian? Probably not, unless you supplying them with some, you know, as a florist, it's not relevant, is it?
No, well,
I mean, do you match flowers to skin tone? No. you match flowers to whatever it is the couple want you to match flowers to.
This is it, yeah.
You know, so it's not relevant. But gender identity is probably more likely to be relevant than the colour identity, depending on what part of the wedding industry you're working in.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, there's, you know, let's say, for example, I have two brides come to me, which has, you know, happened many times over my 11 years in business. And I've learned over the years that, some may go down the route of one of them wearing a dress and one of them wearing a suit. Both of them might choose to wear dresses. You're not talking about, what is right for a gay couple. These are, everyone's different, whether they're gay or
whether they want buttonholes, whether they want,
you just ask them,
whether they a corsage or,
So I'll say to them, are you both having bouquets or what are you guys, guys say, there's the word guys again, that's naughty. What are you both wearing? Are you wearing a suit or a dress? So I'll open the conversation that way.
But don't say, are you wearing a suit or a dress? What are you wearing? Open question. Just massively. And I think the beauty of the conversations that we're all going to have within the industry is like, make them open questions, because eventually you will have to do closed questions. So what are you wearing? And then they can tell you. And then, is it a suit or a dress? So that's an open question. Is it a suit or a dress? That's a closed question, because they've only got one or two options.
Absolutely.
So I would say initially just open. Tell me about you. Tell me about what you want. So who, why, how, why, when, those kind of questions. Yeah. And then close down the questions when you need to, because you've got to drill down to specifics.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the first questions I have on my online inquiry form is, tell me about you and your big day.
Yeah.
So that really opens, it's like you say, a very open-ended question. It opens up a conversation. I get to hear about all sorts of things, what people's background is, what's important to them, because that'll naturally come out with them answering that question. Yeah. For example, I had a consultation recently with a bride who she is a white bride, and she is marrying an Indian man. And she offered up that information on her form. She says, we're having an English Asian fusion wedding, and we want lots of pops of bright colour to honour that side of his culture and things like that. So it was a great conversation. Sadly, I didn't get to meet the groom on the call, but it was a great conversation. And I've had plenty of experience with Asian weddings as well, to kind of know what she means in terms of the pops of colour, etc. Absolutely, open-ended questions are a great way to go about it. And I guess, don't be afraid to sort of say, it's like you say, it's listening to the couple, isn't it? So once you've attracted them with your online presence and used that language, the gender neutral language, for example, and etc. And then you've actually physically got them in the room with you or on a Zoom call or something. Yeah. It's listening to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, like your disability pronouns and your disability, and I think a disability pronoun is something people probably won't come across. They'll come across gender pronouns a lot more than they'll come across disability pronouns. But if somebody's going to use a disability pronoun, they'll tell you what it is. We don't necessarily, it's useful to know there are them out there, but we don't necessarily need to know exactly what they are. It's not necessarily, you don't have to have a mind that soaks up absolutely everything. You just have to have the mind that's open, and the people that you're working with will tell you if they've got a disability, if you've asked the right questions. And you need to know these things, because depending on what kind of disability is going to depend on how you're going to service their needs on the day and before the day, as you lead up to everything. So it's good to know the nuances of everybody that you're dealing with, and just being open. And you'll find that a lot of suppliers have hidden disabilities. A lot of the people you work with will have hidden disabilities as well as visible disabilities, or be differently abled depending on who you're talking to. It's going to be differently abled or disabled. Sorry, joking again.
Cough again.
So it's just a question of, don't put them in the box. Allow them to just take that lid off.
Well, that's exactly, not all Black people are the same, not all Asian people are the same. It's everyone's got their own personality as well. In terms of culture, for example, I've always been of the mindset that, with when talking about gay weddings, like a wedding's a wedding to me. If you're giving me money in exchange for flowers, then that's, brilliant.
Well, I need to go.
That's the aim of the game. I don't care, what your sexual orientation is. But I think, that's on the inside. I think I'm very aware that I have to make it obvious to people and respect people's stance on it, because, for some gay couples, for example, within the gay community, it's very they take pride and they want to shout and scream from the rooftops, we're having a gay wedding, and they want to scream it out. That's part of their identity and they're proud of it, and rightly so. And but for others, it is just they don't even mention it. It's not so much of a deal for them. So like you say, listening helps establish where they stand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like with a wedding is a wedding, but no wedding's the same. No two weddings are the same. Yeah, and it's whatever couple you're dealing with will want it in their own particular way. And like I say, you'll have very muted colours and you'll have explosions of colours.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this industry so fantastic, because we can.
Well, this is it. Outside of the issue of inclusivity, I think it's part of our jobs to listen to the couples, and just see what they want. Right. And this is what, when people email or DM me saying, oh, can I have a price list for your weddings, for example? I'm like, well, I don't have one, because everyone's wedding is different, and everyone's wedding is as unique as they are. So let's get on a call, fill in this inquiry form, and then we'll arrange a consultation. Yeah.
And it very much depends what kind of flowers you want, whether they're in season or whether, I've got to import them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what's important to them. I don't know what they identify as. I don't know if there's a particular sentimental thing they want, or, what pronouns to use, or what their background, for example, I've had, it's all right, we can't hear you cough, bless you. I had a disabled bride recently. I got her on a call, on a consultation. That wasn't apparent until we got on the call. Not that it mattered anyway. But it did matter in a way, in terms of me designing a bouquet for her, because
size and how.
Exactly. Her size made a difference. But we didn't talk about it until she offered that information. She says, you as you can see, and she's pointed out the issue. Issue. That's not the correct word either. But she pointed out her disability. I was already bearing in mind, what am I going to create for this lady? It can be important. And I think that the main thing is for people to sort of be, like you say, open, listen to people, and just be mindful, I guess, of what you're putting out there.
Don't be scared to ask the questions. I'll keep reiterating that. Don't be scared to ask the question, because people will embrace the fact that you might not fully understand what they're about to tell you, but you're open to learning about it. And as a white person, don't expect Black people to educate you.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Ask the question, say, where do I go to get educated? But when George Floyd was murdered, I had so many people coming to me, oh, you're Black, where do I go? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going. You might want to go on the same journey as me, but I don't know where you need to go to learn what you need to learn, because I don't know what you already know. So, but it's people, you're always learning, and people are always educating you because you're asking the right questions. But if you're saying, right, okay, I want to go on a diversity curve, and I need to know all about how to be an ally, or how to know the difference between appropriation and appreciation. There's so much information out there, but don't just expect your Black friends to be able to educate you, because they could be on the same learning journey as you.
Well, this is it, and I can totally understand why people would do that. They certainly don't want to offend their friend, but they're the only I guess source of information protocol that they have. So yeah, it's a tricky one. But I guess intention's a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it. But I'm so pleased that, people like yourself run a course on stuff like this. So there's places for people like me to come and learn how to not exclude people and not offend people unintentionally. And so can you tell us a little bit about your course?
So it's launching, it goes live tomorrow, and I appreciate this is going to be going out after it's gone live, but it goes live in February, so we're in February.
Excellent. 1st of Feb.
And it's a basic 101 for wedding industry professionals. When I first started to look at this, it was just going to be for celebrants. But then it just grew and it got bigger and it got more relevant to other people within the wedding industry. So it's a mix of videos and quizzes and workbooks, and it will lead people through some of the diversity issues that they won't necessarily have considered previously. Start off with learning about what are the protected characteristics as part of the introduction, before hearing from a real life couple about their experiences in planning their wedding. Some of the topics to be looking at is like active allyship versus being fair weather friend, fusion weddings, language and etiquette around disability and how hidden disabilities may affect somebody's wedding, including that as a supplier. And then before looking at the use of language and what your use of language says to the audience and the difference between gender, sex and sexual orientation, because just lumps them into the same thing. And then there's a bonus chapter which I won't be telling you anything about. I'll get on the course to find out.
Excellent, love it. Well, it's fantastic, because like you say, you can't just go to your black, I'm sure your black friend would understand, but you can't go to that black friend and expect them to educate you. So it's fantastic that there is this sort of resource out there. I'm so pleased you've created this for people.
So I've worked with two people, because obviously I'm not an expert, and the thing about inclusivity as well is to call in the experts or people that have got a lived experience of certain things and pay them for their time and their and their information, which is, I think, with a lot of times you'll go to somebody that might be an expert, but a lot of people will expect that information for free. But it's not, you're respecting people who become an expert because of the time and the money they've invested in becoming an expert. So, I've paid the people to create this with me. So Judy Wayman, who is another celebrant, she's done the disability module for me. She lives with a hidden disability and has also been a lecturer and, knows quite a lot about this hidden and and then, like I say, Kai who's the Career Queer, they've created the LGBTQ module for me. So, amazing.
So you're putting into practice inclusivity as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, just because I know a bit about it doesn't mean I fully understand everything, and I'm not about to try and teach people things that I haven't got any lived experience. So how on earth can I say, oh, this is what the gay community want? I have no idea.
You don't speak for everyone. No, absolutely. I love that. So I think that's, do you know what? I could talk about this all day, and I think it's such a hugely important issue, but I think in terms of the podcast, it's probably a good place to sort of leave that today. We could maybe do future episodes and interview, some wedding magazine owners or, things like that to sort of see how they approach this. But for today, honestly, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I really hope the viewers kind of gain a little bit of insight from this and start putting some things into practice. I know I've learned some things today, so thank you for that, and I hope the audience do too. So for those of you listening, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned some things from Michelle, and if you want Michelle's contact details, Michelle, what are they?
So in relation to the course, it's Michelle at thesavvycelebrant.co.uk to find out more about the course. I'm all over Instagram as Michelle_funky celebrant. That's my other hat. Facebook. Just look for the Funky Celebrant and you'll find me.
Yeah, this is it. So Funky Celebrant's your celebrant business, and the Savvy Celebrant is the
educational.
Course. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Michelle, and thanks everyone for listening. Well, thanks so much for listening all the way to the end of Wedding Florist Social. Remember to hit subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. And if you want access to some free community and support, then head across to Facebook and look me up on the Worldwide Wedding Florist Community Group. I look forward to seeing you there.